Today we will continue our journey in the field of foreign exchange forecast just after talking about historical trends and simulations. Today we would like to build a nice macro model. And in this case we will use vector autoregression. So the benefit of vector autoregression for us from practical point of view is that it behaves like an ordinary regression, but it can manage feedback loops between the variables. So if a variable can be both cause and causability in a regression, this is called endogeneity, then it would completely derail any regression attempt. But in the case of vector autoregression, they were able to solve it. But that's why we need some input requirements, some special inputs, and also we have to define also the outputs. So what are the input requirements? So first of all, we have to use differences. Differentiated data. So it means that we have to take the difference between the t minus t minus 1 states. So just it's quite simple. Then also, because if we are doing this, then we will have unbiased and stationary data. So it's necessary for unbiased regression results. Due to stationarity. So first of all, that's what we need. Second thing, as an input, we need dummy variables which are representing crisis situations, because otherwise, if you are not including crisis situations, then there will be too many outliers in the data set, and outliers are always killing regressions because they are distorting p-values. So maybe you have results, just they are not significant, or maybe you have completely nonsense results. So that's why dummy variables represent any kind of shock or regime change. So shocks, regime changes, or country-specific issues, but right now we have just one set of countries, so in this case we are not affected. But shocks, they are always shocks like recessions, or regime changes. So if the currency was floating and now it's fixed, or it was fixed and now it's floating, so like or for example, if a country was taking up loan from the IMF loan. So if any suspicious thing happened, because other hand we could check all the variables that looking for outliers and filtering them out manually and then create dummy variables to represent them, but that would be so long. So usually we are just doing this, and in this case we will be using the business cycle clock of the European Commission, because this is a clear and official database. It defines that when was the Eurozone in a crisis situation and then when it was growing. So it's quite clear and efficient. Then also we have to define two things. So and this is practically still input level, just it's different because we have to separate or time set for two subsamples. So first of all, we have to train our regression model on learning or teaching sample or training sample. And it's always, okay, depends on the book, but it's usually, or the source, but usually people are saying that 80%, but I was able to see 70%, sometimes it was 90%. That's not that nice, but so let's say 80% of the data is used to calibrate the model, and the remaining will be the testing. Yeah, is used to test the accuracy. So in this case we have quite simple targets here. So we would like to maintain the stability of the expected value, so that's why the MAA, and also we would like to minimize the volatility or the standard deviation, so RSME values. So it means that if we have at least two competing models, we are selecting the model which has lower RME or RSME values. And I think after that we can do everything, but the case of outputs, if we would like to create the cookbook for us, first of all we have to, so this is a regression, and in regressions we have to always look for residuals. So in the case of residual we cannot keep, or no information should remain there. So just to remind you that our entire model is about, we would like to describe US dollar euro, its changes, and the relationship with the sovereign spread, and also the inflation in the US and in France, and obviously they should. So the inflation and the interest rate data should be responsible for all the changes inside the exchange rate. So whatever remains, it should have any memory backwards, so that's why it should not be autocorrelated. So no autocorrelation, because it would mean that it's containing information about the past. And also it should be normally distributed. If you're analyzing historical data, normal distribution is not a deal, so usually we are not testing it. But if we would like to have forecast, then the normal distribution is much more a key factor than the lack of autocorrelation. And how can we test this? Obviously, we have nice tests, so autocorrelation will be tested with, it depends on the software, so sometimes Durbin-Watson test is analyzed, and in this case it should be, let's say that 0.8. Okay, it also depends. So sometimes the literature says that, oh, Durbin-Watson should be around 2, but what is the range of around 2, which is accepted by a reviewer? So some books are saying that it's 1.7 to 2.3, or it's 1.8 to 2.2. This was much more successful, at least in my career. Or if you don't have Durbin-Watson test, then it will be the Ljungbox or LM test, and whatever we are using, but the p-value should be above 0.05. If we can see these numbers, then it's okay. If we are not able to see these numbers, if we fail, then we have to increase the lag numbers. So we have to add the previous values to the model. So calibrating log numbers, they are quite simple. So we are working with quarterly data set. So for quarterly data, we are starting at 4, because in this case we can represent an entire year, and we are collecting data from this time period. But if it's not enough, then we can go to 1.5 year, and we can go to 8 year, and there will be an alternative approach to calibrate this one with the information criteria, but they are quite useless because they are not managing autocorrelation. So that's why I prefer manual ways, because we can test that, okay, what is happening here, and then if it's good, then good. Okay, normal distribution. This supposed to be a Dornick-Hansen test. So let's say DH test or Jacques-Barrat. Whatever we are using, again, the problem is the same, that the p-value should be way above 0.05. And if we are failing, we need more dummy variables. Or we should check that which variable is responsible for the shock. So maybe there are too many outliers in them, so we have to define a dummy variable which represent shocks in these variables, and sooner or later we can solve it. So yeah. And after we had the diagnostics in the residuals, then we have we can run the forecast. To see if the currency appreciates or depreciates. So, simple stuff. We were able to see that just several points, and then we can finish with it. So, let's begin. Last time we were using, or we were building up this data set, and now we can remove this one. And still we can see that maybe it's not the perfect thing, because personally I like to reduce the number of variables. So in regressions it's much better to say that, okay, let's have a sovereign premium here, and also let's have an inflation difference or inflation premium also here. The question is that how should we calibrate it? Okay, so the US will be first, and then so sovereign premium. we should just take the difference. Oh. Just zooming in this case you can see. So we should just take the difference between US 10-year yield minus the French 10-year yield, and then immediately we can see that if this thing is positive, and obviously when it will increase, then the US or the euro should appreciate. If it's going backwards, then it should depreciate. And also we can see the inflation premium US minus the French indicator. And also we need dummy variable, so let's say the recession. Sometimes we are thinking about that, oh, should we represent COVID? But COVID also created its recession, so it's in the dummy, so that's why we can spare this work for us. And we should download business cycle clock for European Commission. Yeah, we can see that this is the first result on Google. Then we can see that our timeline starts in 2010. And we can see that, yeah, there was no... So if something is dark, this is recession, this is just slow growth. The slow growth paths never work well, so we are excluding it because of experience, practical experience of mine. So we can see that there is nothing. The first thing happens in the third quarter of 2011 until 2013. So we are saying that, okay, everything is 0, and we're just writing in ones. Until the first quarter of 13. Yep. And the next thing will be just the last quarter of 2019. So the Eurozone was already in a close to recession form even before COVID. Just after that it was accelerated a bit. So let's scroll down. Last quarter. And we can see the 2 quarters, and after that it started to recover. Right now we are asking questions that is there enough natural gas in the continent, so maybe we can assume that there will be some shock. So let's see a pessimistic scenario when recession is going back to 1, and also we should define a timeline here as well. Maybe the timeline is not required as much, but let's just keep it here. We have to load in the data again, but nope. So we are doing just one thing. I would like to forecast only 1 year ahead because it's still a question that does it work or not. But so first let's be pessimistic. After that we can see that what is happening in optimistic case, and I have to update the data here as well. Yeah. Okay. So the recession dummy is set to 1. We have defined the time, 1 year ahead, that's all. So, Gretl, why not to do it second time? Okay, I cannot put it here. So, open data. As it remembers that I used this before, yes, time series, forward, quarterly forward, 2010 forward, yes, apply, sample, set range, and it's not good because it should be 41. So still we can say that at least the first quarter of COVID will be included. So which is really important because information was created also at that time set. So at least maybe the reliability of the calibration will be better. Okay, so you have this, and then in the case of model, multiple time series and vector autoregression should be used. Okay, now we cannot use it because first of all I have to make the differentiation. So add difference, and add difference. Okay, so we need the differences for the US dollar. Then multiple vector autoregression. Then we can see here everybody. And in the heterogeneous variable. So this is the second thing what we have to remember. So there is always a hierarchy between the variables. So we can say that this is also an input requirement. So hierarchy among so we are not sorting it like in an ordinary regression that I would like to analyze these variables with a set of this and that variables, but we have to define that practically if we are ordering them, then which variable is the most important, and then to the less important. So we have inflation. So inflation represents the balance between aggregated supply and aggregated demand in most of the cases. So I think that this is highly a general economic variable because after that, if you are looking on interest rates are always managed by the central bank who is trying to manage inflation. Okay, right now it's quite hard to say that this is happening in the ECB, but still legal mandate is and at the end of the day, we can say that, okay, and currency both affected by inflation and interest rate changes. So they will be at the lowest level behind. So we will start with inflation, then interest rates, then currency. So let's get back to our menu here. Now we can see that what is the order here. So first inflation, then the sovereign premium, and then the euro. And also we have to add the recession somewhere, and they are considered as exogenous variables, so they are living here. And you can see here the leg order set to 4. We are using quarterly data. So this is the we are always trying to cover 1 year at the beginning, so it will be sufficient for us. And after that, we don't have to push any further buttons. So we can say that, oh, it's good, okay. If there are no error messages, then we can see that it looks like as an ordinary regression output, but we never care about the coefficients. So this is, once I tried to publish this part, but reviewers were saying that nope, you don't need this. What we have here is the Durbin-Watson, so it works. It's within the 1.8 and 2.2 regime, so it's good. And you can see that, yeah, there are three equations. Equation 1 describes the inflation premium, equation 2 describes the sovereign premium, and equation 3 describes the US dollar. But it doesn't matter because, yeah, sorry, no. Darwin-Watson is different. It's funny because eViews doesn't publishes the separate autocorrelations. Okay, this one, yes. So let's see. Well, let's write our results here. So we can say that it is acceptable. Good, so we have no memory in the dataset, but in the case of tests, we should check normality of residuals. Hopefully it will be... No, it's not. It's not good. So this is supposed to be the p-value in the Dornick-Hansen test, and it's lower. So what we can do here that, okay, we could dig up for further dummy variables, or we can say that let's include more residuals, or more legs. So let's look backwards more. Oh, it doesn't like it when this happens, but okay, let's increase to 6. Sometimes it's... At least we did not destroyed the autocorrelation, so it's still nice. And hopefully it's rubbish. Then we have to look for issues with the dataset. So the simplest way to detect outliers is our eyes. So let's see that if we are looking at US dollar euro exchange rate, does it change in a strange way or not? Okay, if we are looking on the inflation premium, we can see that it's going back and forth, so it's okay, this one is not happy, but maybe here in the case of sovereign premium we have a shock. So it was decreasing from one quarter of year suddenly to another quarter of year. So in point 40 to 41. What just happened here? 40, 41. We are already representing it with the dummy, so maybe it's this thing is covered here. Also, we can see that in point 11, after that there is a shock, but I think, yeah, the Eurozone crisis is also added. So right now we can say that let's check what is happening if you are applying 8 legs, and if it's not recovering from this problem, then since we don't have much time, then we will use this model. Normality. It works! Hopefully, luckily. So sometimes if you are lucky, then by increasing the dummy or the leg number, we can make this manageable. Just it's not that precise. Years. So at the beginning we just covered 1 year, And after that I started to add the information, because I was hoping that if you are adding more information, then it starts to clear up the residual, and then most of the extreme jumps will be smoothed out by this time frame, and practically this is much more luck than
it's 2 year backwards.
Yes, 2 year backwards. Yes. So two quarters. Yeah, we are writing it here, and also normal distribution. It was good. Let's just try copy this one. We need just the p-value. So now it's good. This is acceptable. And also, I did not document the sample size, so yeah, 2010, 2020, first quarter. Sample. Yeah. Okay, so now we have an efficient model, so I will close down the other one. Because from diagnostics point of view, this is solid, so we can work with this. So if impulse response is, and let's just give the 90% because it doesn't like it as much, or maybe I will do this response, yes, variable wise, because in this case we have with itself as well. For color. So here we can see, it's still quite strange, but we can see that in the so in the first quarter of years, if the inflation was higher in the US, then the US dollar started to depreciate, if I know well. So let's see which is the strong. No, so the US dollar started to appreciate against the US dollar or against the euro, which is quite strange. But after that, if time passed, then in fourth quarter later, then this inflation premium increased, practically started to create depreciation of the euro. So we can see that it's rolling back and forth, and this is not that significant, but luckily right now we are in a state of forecasting, so we are not here for studying the historical data set. In the case of sovereign premium, we should have so in this case we can see that, okay, if the US had any kind of positive premium in their interest rate, then the US dollar started to appreciate. So at least in this case we can see it immediately in the first year, maybe also in the third quarter of year, and later as well. Again, results are not that nice, but at least we can see the information is inside. And still we have one last thing to check before running the forecast, to see that do we have any kind of meaning here. So why this thing is better than just looking for the p-value in the regression? It's better because we can see that how the dynamic interactions between the variables and their significance is appearing. So we can see that as time passes, past information start to lose their significance. Here in the short run we can have something. It's completely ugly, but we can see it here. Variance decomposition is much more used to see the weight or the importance. So, graph variance decomposition. 0. Yes. Yeah. No, not this one. Line graph. Yes. Okay, color. So in this case, what we can see here, that okay, the model is quite efficient because we would like to describe that. So this is a 0 to 100% weight list, and we can see that the sovereign premium, which is this line, the red line, is responsible for more than 60% in the short run, while the inflation premium is also responsible for nearly 40, and then it goes up. But at the same time, the own development, so the exchange rate on itself, has a really low importance. So it's usually this is not the case. So we can see that the exchange rate is much more important for itself, but we got an efficient model, luckily. So okay, and finally we can do the forecast. So tick. So analysis, forecast, US dollar. And then we can see that, oh, there is the forecast range. And it sees that what is the end of it. Automatic dynamic forecast out of sample. Yes, show fitted values to pre-forecast range, because in this case we can test what is happening backwards. And confidence interval, well, we should reduce it to 68. Yeah, please don't. Okay, it's not failing. Ladies and gentlemen, we get good results. At least they are significant. Today we are lucky, because usually we should deal with back and forth with the model and add variables, remove variables, and so on. But right now we have something. Nice, such niceness. So practically what we can see, that at the beginning the data was inside the model, and practically the forecast followed the real actual data. So the green line is what happened with the US dollar euro changes, and then this is when the forecast starts to be a standalone thingy, and then we can see that it provides us an appreciation information, and we can see that error bars are also positive. So not just the median value, but also the error bars are keeping there. So we can see that this shows us a significant devaluation for the euro. But we know that I was quite pessimistic, so I set the shock dummy to 1 in case of so still you can say that but it's biased. So yeah, I should. So we should run again the same model with zeros here, and then we could evaluate this. But practically we are able to see that okay, there is a depreciation. Excel forecast says that there is a depreciation. The simulation said that at least it remains here, or there will be a depreciation in the pessimistic scenario. The historical trend line said that there is a depreciation, and also we can remember on the forward market data from last week, which said that there will be a depreciation. So maybe there is a chance that there will be a depreciation for 2029, and or maybe not. So sometimes markets are quite crazy, but right now we can see that if there is no sudden structural change in the monetary policy of the ECB, if suddenly, maybe if they are firing the current head of the ECB and they are electing a German central bank or experienced central banker manager there, then maybe the market sentiment would change. But right now, with the current information, we can say that this is a clear sign from many different directions that there will be depreciation.